realized consciousness in the strange master-slave scene, which opens the play. One of Francisco's confessions offers perhaps the most personal articulation of the play, certainly in a more upfront way, of emotional insecurity, alienation, and of a feeling that people's responses to the speaker are either harmful and hostile, or if positive and loving. Inauthentic, and based on the explicit grounds of racial prejudice. Francisco's alienation dreams of is sketched out in vivid terms that are drawn from the world of the American South. You really don't know what it's like not to understand what's happening to you. You're in a big white bed, as light as if flying in a dream. You get a knock at the door. Men enter. You see them dimly, very dimly. They speak. You hear them faintly, very faintly, and then they start hitting and lynching you, and you get hurt, badly hurt. They leave, and you've understood nothing, and you are beaten, blown down by blows. Later, they return. You get up. You want to talk to them, and you think you will understand. Then you are told that you are also a tough guy, and they leave you alone with a medal, and you are beaten down by blows. This nightmare seems to come straight out of the world of Richard Wright, a satire le putain, basically is the respectable prostitute, possibly seen by Fanon in Lyon, and discussed by him in Père Noir, describing to Ganetti his nightmarish world that does not allow him to participate in everyday existence. Francisco recounts a dream of being lynched, a nightmare that would haunt Fanon to the end of his life. Unexpectedly in the dream, the men return, acknowledge that he is a, quote, tough guy, and given him a medal. He is left at once with a medal and a body heavy with blows, beaten up because he is a black man, and then acknowledged and rewarded as human. Giannetti responds problematically to Francisco's nightmare of a dualism of being identified racially or as a human being, by also seeing him as black and affirming his desirable blackness. I love, and if you love me, I will tell you why those men beat you down with blows and metal. I love you, and I want to repeat to you that what the McKinley tree confided in me one evening when naked I scattered grains of love in the riverbanks. She stands up and moves close to him. I love you. Oh my God, I want to tell you why your body has the audacity of the coconut tree and the muted brutality of a black person. They used Tom something, I can't say it again. Speaking of him as if he were black, she immediately invokes the stereotypical images of black people amongst Europeans. The coconut and the black TT. They use Tom twice, that's what I'll say. The dynamics of this exchange correlate with the ambivalent and antithesis developed in the play between whiteness and blackness, lightness and heaviness, day and night, the right way and the polarities reverse, as in beginnings to appear within absoluteness of her desire, her self-loves. She herself loves Francisco in a slavish mode of the black woman. For the white man, as described by Fanon in Père Noir. At one level, indeed, The Drowning Eye offers a dramatization and exploration of some of the psychological traits, different personalities produced by the interracial relationship that would be analyzed in the second and third chapter of that book, all fueled by the black Martinican dream of becoming white. So chapter 2 of Père Noir, the woman of color and the white man, begins with the discussion of how love ordinarily involves an affirmation of the self by the other. My beloved will support me energetically in assuming my virility, a phenomenon of failed love, quote unquote, that Fanon pointed out was an example of, quote, bad faith and inauthenticity of the Satries Electront et Elinut. Fanon argues that authentic love is impossible in the presence of the sentiments of inferiority and exaltation in the power structure of the relationship between a woman of color and a European. In the Downing Eyes, he explores similar dynamics of power without specifying that those feelings emerge as a result of racial differences. In Pure Noir, Fanon analyzes the recent book of Mayat Capicia, Jesuit Martiniquisi, I can't say it, I Am a Martinican Woman, 1948, in which Mayati's relationship operates on the same structure of absolute devotion as Geneti's. Mayati's loves a white man unconditionally. He is her lord. She asks for nothing, demands nothing, expects for a little whiteness in her life. As part of his mental landscape of the desire for lactification, Mayati projects stereotypical images of whiteness and blackness that are for her, as Fanon puts it, quote, represents the two poles of this world, poles in perpetual conflict, a genuinely Manichaean notion of the world, where we've said it, black or white. That is a question. With this last phrase, Fanon has turned Hamlet's essential moment of uncertain choice between life and death into one of choices to be white or black. The Manichaean world, white or black. What the heck? Fanon stepped on your picture, that's funny. I am white.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I think Fanon's having a little extra energy because you keep saying his name.
Okay. I am white. In other words, I embody beauty and virtue, which have never been black. I am the color of day. I am black. I am in total fusion with the world, in sympathetic affinity with the earth, losing my ego in the heart of the cosmos. I am black, not because of a curse, but because my skin has been able to capture all the cosmic effluvia. I am truly a drop of sun under the earth. The antithesis that Francisco describes Mayati developing here is comparable to the difference between Lucian and Gaienti's Francisco in The Drowning Eye, where the one is identified with beauty, the day, and other identified with night and the fusion with the cosmos. Lucian, I love you, Gaienti, among forgotten by the night. Gaienti, I love you, Lucian. Sun drop.
It was almond forgotten by the night.
I said almond. In Pure Noir, Fanon goes on to critique overtly these positions associated with the stereotypes, ideas of whiteness and blackness, including those of negritude. But here, the Manichaean antithesis resonates in the opposition between the two brothers, one predominantly white and associated with the daylight, the other linked on two occasions to blackness and associated with the Frobenian desire for a complete fusion with the world. Whilst Gaienti, the lover, alternates from one to the other. The play shows the author working through the psychic dimensions of being haunted by the series of corrosive stereotypes that as a black man he had initialized and needed to work through in order to overcome the alienation that they had produced. The play thus presents a drama that was being played out around and inside Fanon himself. It amounts to a staged self-analysis, with Fanon's dramatizing through different masks, the ambivalence of his own consciousness and forms it of subjectivity, and being split between being both black and white at the same time. Putting it in a phrase which means a torment soul, literally someone flayed alive. As a Martiniquean, Fanon Macy points out, was an honorable Tabab white man, not a native indigene. He did not support César's reinscription of black identity and the concept of negritude. César's negritude was a provocative and deliberate statement of his identification with Africanness, very different from Fanon's own identification of himself, a quasi-metropolitan. Fanon left for Lyons because there were, he said, too many black people in Paris. I wanted something more milky. I can't say that word because it's an N-word. He did not mean fellow Martiniquans, such as Césaire, but Africans. Fanon used the term, can't say that word because it's the N-word, exclusively to describe Africans, not Antilles, whom he described at once as Nor or European. He hated being treated in any way that gestured towards his color. For example, being complimented for his good French, a sensitive subject for Fanon that forms the topic of the first chapter of Pierre Noir. He recounts scathingly that having given a lecture in Lyon, a French comrade warmly congratulated him. Basically, you're a white man, sensing an identification of himself with Frenchness and therefore culturally with whiteness. One of his fellow medical students provocatingly nicknamed Fanon Whitey, without advertising its racial component. The drowning eye analysis, the split consciousness of a man who sees himself as both black and white, caught between two Nor, but not, I can't say that word because it's the N-word, is mentally European and therefore culturally white. In Pierre Noir, Fanon would return to Shakespeare's Hamlet to articulate the consciousness of black man who identifies with being white. Out of the blackest part of my soul, through the cross-hatched zone, surges up this desire to be suddenly white. I want to be recognized not as black, but as white. And this is the form of recognition that Hegel never described. Who better than the white woman to bring this about? By loving me, she proves to me that I am worthy of a white love. I am loved like a white man. I am a white man. In order to analyze such ambivalent, contradictory feelings, Fanon invokes the principal character, Jean Vesuy, and René Morin's recent novel, I can't say that, a man the same as the other, 1947, that's the name. Jean Vesuy, can't say it, is not a black person and does not want to be a black person, yet unbeknownst to him, a hiatus was what has occurred. There is something indefinable, irreversible, indeed, that's within the Harold Rosenberg. The reference here is to the article of Rosenberg on Hamlet, recently translated in Les Temps Modernes in 1948, and heavily marked up in Fanon's own copy. The hiatus, the gap missing part of Buchanan split cleavage that operates within Jean Vesuy, the N-word, who is not a N-word, is undefinable and irreversible. His that within is the existential deviation that white civilization of European culture has imposed on black man, just as Jean Vesuy, can't say his name, needs the love of a white woman in order to affirm to himself as white. So in The Drowning Eye, Francisco needs Ganetti's love to affirm his own identity and sense of an inner self, except that initially Francisco can never be satisfied by Ganetti's protestations of love as such. Are you okay, Joe? Mm-hmm. Okay. It is only when she declares that he has opened a wound within her that only he can heal. This open wound that her hands made in me had to be stitched up. That her choice and recognition of him becomes enough. In the article of Rosenberg that Fanon cites, the phrase that describes the inner wound of consciousness, the that within, which Fanon quotes in English, appears at part of André Gaudí's translation of Hamlet's speech to his mother, Act 1, Scene 2 of the play. Hamlet, like Francisco, is a gloomy man of the night and the shadow pursuing authenticity beyond or behind the appearance of everyday nursing. Inside him and grieving wound of his father's death. It festers within beneath any surface or epidermal appearance, but dominates his relations with others. The knighted Hamlet's insistence on reality rather than seeming and show on the painful that within of the wound of his father's death, and his interrogation of the ways in which language can both articulate and invade this condition anticipates Francisco's preoccupation with authenticity, with the role of language, and with his choice of the interior life over the outer world. So the swollen and gloomy Francisco becomes a morbid prince of darkness who inhabits the shadows and the night. It is night and Francisco reign has come. Existentialist questions. In The Drowning Eye, we thus see the character moving between psychological characteristics of the different racialized personalities described in Black Skins, the various neuroses that Fanon sought to cure in writing that book, whilst at times Galantes enslaved herself to Francisco as if he were white and she were black. So she also adores him sexually as if he were black. So too Francisco's demands repeated an unsatisfiable recognition from her as if he was black and she was white. In contrast to this vacillating world of fluid transpositions of white and black, reinforced through the alternating imagery of the sun and the moon, day and night, stars and death, The Drowning Eye presents a set of mutually exclusive alternatives. A man will always have to choose between life and death. As Lucian puts it, variously follows Hamlet's or Jasper's, that becomes the focus of debate throughout the long third scene, which dramatizes the essential discussion about the meaning of life in the face of the view that it is absurd. This proposition is introduced not as a radical thought, but as a conventional class assignment that Francisco was set in school. Quote, what possible reason does a human have to exist? With this question, we find ourselves firmly in the post-war world of existential writers. From Nietzsche, man is aware everywhere of the ghastly absurdities of existence, to, can't say this person's name, Kierkegaard, in the secularized form of a religious substitute developed by Jasper and Walls, to Sartre and Camus, whilst the class assignment seems to come close, almost directly, from Camus. The anthrophonal dialogical form of The Drowning Eye recalls that Kierkegaard of Either Or, which Fanon had been reading, though the two brothers in the play do not correlate simply to the antithesis presented by I don't know how to say that word. AESTHETE. Oh my gosh, I gotta turn up the volume. Aesthete. A person who has or claims to have highly developed, refined sensitivity to beauty, particularly the arts of nature. Aesthete. Oh my gosh, go away. And Judge Wilhelm in Kierkegaard's text The issue debated in the play oscillate between those of the either or, namely the aesthetic dictated to immediacy, the ethical turn towards the universal, and the religious with faith conceived as an expression of a limit to what can be thought. These found the opposition between Lucian's hedonistic and antithetic and aesthetic life of pleasure and the albulic and apathetic religiosity of Francisco, who can't be bothered with life whilst he is preoccupied with death, asserting the most profound singularity of his individuality against the universal by railing against the life of the crowd, presented by Francisco wariness with existence, his adolescence, whilst be in pursuit of a personal transcendence, Jesus Christ, draws on a common existentialist Moffat, as described in the opening of Emmanuel Levinet's Existence and Existence, 1947. The philosophical debates can also be interpreted in Satrine terms, dramatized into the authentical choice that Ganentes has to make between the two brothers, whose personalities invoke the Satrine division between being in itself and being for itself. Francisco seeks the conditions of the first, the mode of existence that Sartre says is that the animals or inanimate objects, but which manifests itself in humans as a longing for control and an absolute godlike state. From Sartre to Hegelian to, Heideggerian desire that constitutes bad faith. In his pursuit of being in itself, Francisco rejects what he considers the inauthenticity that follows from making compromises to the social pressures to conform. Lucian, on the other hand, follows the second way, being for itself, and affirming his decision to enjoy living into the future. He has willed his own form of freedom and achieved consciousness even if he cannot transcend his own subjectivity. Lucian's presents this as a deliberate choice, but Ganenti denies it and claims that only Francisco refusal merits the title of a real choice. These two possibilities, which the play pits against each other, are irresolvable in their own terms, whereas Sartre pushes against the first in favor of the second. The Drowning Eye shows itself fascinated with Sartre's rejecting Hegelian others. This correlates with Fanon's observation of Sartre and Pierre Noir. For once, this born Hegelian had forgotten that consciousness needs to get lost in the night of the absolute and only condition for the attaining self-consciousness. Fanon rejects any construction of the self that involves its relations to the other, for othering is precisely what opens up the demeaning conditions of black consciousness. What is certain is that at the very moment when I endeavor to grasp by being Sartre, who remains, quote, the other, by naming me strips away every illusion, far from being simple. Sartrean, therefore, the Drowning Eye stages a critical engagement of Sartre, corroborated by Francisco, demand for Ganenti to recognize him as part of herself, not as an other, but by his identification with the material, though hardly inert, world of things, which causes requinten such nausea in Nausea, 1938. Hint of a further source of philosophical influence on the play comes in its epithetic, half-rhythm, half-rhyming, but elusive title, The Drowning Eye. At first, it is hard to see its relevance. In its manuscripts, the play has no title at all, but by Jacobi, the Josie Fanon, refers to it independently as The Drowning Eye. In the syntax of the French, can't say that word, the phrase hovers between active and passivity, between volition and the eye actively draws, perhaps even draws itself, and the passivity of being overwhelmed. The eye is drowning. As this suggests, si noi could be translated in the present simple, in the present simple, a single act or present continuous with such emphasis, the temporality of the process of drowning, as in the title of Stevie Smith's poem, Not Waving but Drowning. The drowning eye could simply refer to the act of crying, as a JAA maltreats late 19th century Creole poem, La Chapeau de Procureur. However, a line in Victor Hugo's poem passed through Louis the 15th square on the public holiday, pushing the rays and shadows, 1840, comes much closer to the spirit of the play and its central questions of the relationship of the eye to the external reality. Oh, I thought, strange, the superhuman power of the one who keeps us throbbing in his hands. O will of heaven, abyss, where the eyes drowns. Hugo's romantic explanation articulates ideas that would be reconceptualized by Fanon over 100 years later. Towards the end of scene 3, Cadentes exclaims, in a suit of mountains, Whistler becomes the jealous oyster, and the violated red anemones cry in their corner again. It's over Lucian's humans have lost. The mocking sun drowned itself after the cry of blood just now. Gennenti hears and announces that Lucian's human world of the day has thrown itself into the abyss of the night. It is oscillations between light and darkness. The drowning eye plays on identifications between the sun, the eye, and the I, or the self. The word I itself only appears once in a singular. A few lines after Lucian's describes the moment when Francisco saw a green star. He then looked at Lucian with wet eyes and cried for a long time. Lucian continues, Lucian, yes, I love him, as never before a brother has loved. I love his eyes. Some morsel of his being is both source and mouth. He would say, one day he confided to me that he would like to be blind. Gennenti, why? Lucian's, the eye, he answered, must be worthy of the spectacle, but the spectator himself must have a certain dignity. Francisco's desires to be blind sets up the theme developed throughout the play of his disdain for the everyday appearance of the ordinary world and of his desire to see through the spectacle by means of the inner eye into a visionary cosmic world. Quote, and my eyes are backdoored, that one has not closed. The source of this concept of the spectacle of the abyss where the eyes drowns can to be found in Nietzsche's The Birth of Tragedy. For Nietzsche's, the spectacle for which the eye must be worthy is the Apollonian spectacle which the Dionysian artist can see beyond Nietzsche's rights. Beyond Nietzsche's rights. He will have seen more and more deeply than ever and yet wish to be blinded. In that myth, the world of appearance is pushed to its limits, where it denies itself and seeks to escape back into the world of the true and unique reality. In wishing to be blind, to be worthy of the spectacle in order to see the elemental reality behind it, Francisco follows the logic of Nietzsche's Apollonian and Dionysian dialectic, according to which the Dionysian artist pushes the human world of appearance to its limits in order to perceive the essence of what lies behind or beyond. The drowning eye of the play title evokes Nietzsche's clairvoyant eye that is able to go beyond the superficial layer of semblance and perceive the primordial spectacle. This ultimate reality, according to Nietzsche's, embodies a continuing artistic process and indifferent creations and destructions a remote realm invokes in the play by the interventions of the voice in lines such as the following, which also links directly to the title of the play. The silent two captive stars committing suicide at the bottom of the orbit eye socket. The flattering eye represents the movement of the play from the shadows of observable reality, the primal world of Francisco perceives, whilst its identification with what's wrong?
You messed up like 40 words since the first time you messed up. Could you slow down and
Sure.
try a little bit harder?
I am trying hard. Identification with an eye also signals the disappearance of Francisco's individualization as he moves towards the realm of absolute. The complete negation of the self through ascension to the realm of the non-human absolute would mean death itself. Francisco is in love with the easeful death, but he does not seek it altogether, as a repeated emphasis on doors throughout the play suggests. He reached the portal of primal experience without entirely losing himself in it. The classic aesthetic appearance of the sublime sense, Longinus. He stands on the edge, but does not plunge irrevocably into the void. Compared Nietzsche's descriptions of the epidus rex and the birth of tragedy, we see that the poet's interconception was nothing more nor less than a luminous image, which is offered to us by helpful nature after the glancing into the abyss. And here, with the after image of the look into the abyss, we find the second source of inspiration for the title of the play, the transcendent self-sacrificial moments which in César Cachir, as he watches the rising dove imaged in the coronary of his eye, ascends to a great black hole in the sky in which he had wanted to drown himself. Then, strangling me with your lasso of stars, rise, dove, rise, rise, rise. I follow you who are imprinted on my ancestral white cornea. Rise, sky liquor, and the great black hole where the moon ago I want to drown. It is there. I will now fish the malevolent tongue of the night in its immobile I'm going to find out this word. Jesus. Oh. I have to submit. Of course, it's not going to let me say it. Fucking hell. Figures. Oh. Their sublime ending is complicated by its dialectical structure. The poet had wanted to be like the dove and drawn in the great black hole of the sky, but that was a moon ago. Now we will fish the malevolent tongue language of the night. Self-extinction has been replaced by triumphant poetic production. In the drowning eye, we can thus attack the influence of Fanon's readings of the birth of tragedy, mediated by César of the Cachir. César has discovered in Nietzschean's critique of European culture and its Christian values, not to be underestimated given the importance of the Catholic Church in colonial Martinique. Together with his stress of the necessity of the self-creation of new values as a form of self-affirmation, a fulcrum that could be utilized for the colonized persons of color who had been relegated to the negativity of the position of an inferior uncivilized race. Whilst Fanon was generally familiar with the post-war French left reading of Nietzsche's, who took from Césaire a recognition of a transformative possibilities that Nietzsche's philosophy held out for the colonized person. The attraction of Nietzsche's for Fanon can be understood throughout a passage of Karl Jasper's Nietzsche's et El Christianisme that Fanon marked in his copy, in which Jasper argues that it is Nietzsche's who holds out the possibilities that the resentment of disempowerment can be reconstructed by the dispossessed into a form of creative empowerment. Jasper writes, it is Nietzsche who discovers in the domain of psychology that the resentment aroused by powerlessness under the action of the will to power, even in impotence, can become creative, engender values, ideals, interpretations. This reversal, or as Fanon would later put it, transmutation, in many ways correlated with the thinking of Fanon's later therapeutic practice and provided the structures of individuals and social transformation that he would articulate in both Père Noir and La Démesse de Touré. The political relevance of Nietzsche for both Césaire and Fanon should be understood within this conceptual framework of the opotence of the colonized transformed into the will to power in both The Drowning Eye and Parallel Hands. Fanon follows such a model of self-affirmation as he will at the end of Père Noir. In the world I am heading for, I am endlessly creating myself. I am my own foundation. Layered into the dynamics of racial binary, discussed above, the dialogue between the two brothers in The Drowning Eye also offers a philosophical debate between Apollonian light and Dionysian darkness, between a commitment to the values of aesthetics, pleasures of bourgeois life, and the disposition to believe that everyday reality is an illusion that hides a more profound cosmic reality, whilst the pragmatic Lucian complains that Francisco always refused to see things as they are. Francisco sees himself as a descendant who has broken the yoke of individualization. Be right back. IND IBI B. Oh my gosh, come on. Stop doing that. Oh, fucking God damn it. Of course it won't let me say it out loud. Jesus Christ.
We're all guilty of the old one-trick wonder. Good on it.
Individuation. And seeing.
Individuation.
Yeah, I hear you. Individuation. Thank you. And seeing through the veil of appearance to the lunar cosmic world, in his desire to ascend to the realm of the absolute one. The play's fierce and Gnostic, antagonistic, Apollonian, Dionysian opposition plays out in the imagery of life, sun, and transparency, attached to Lucian, whose very name means light, and that a death, darkness, and obscurity associated with Francisco. The Drowning Eye participates us into the essential situation of being caught between being light and darkness, white and black, mediated through the preoccupation of nothingness with mortality and death, with white death, the hideous tenseness of anxiety and death, leading to an assumption into the freedom of an absolute otherness, and of inhuman cosmic materiality, presented in the Nietzschean terms of the return nakedness and the seizing of life. Man is a yes resonating from cosmic harmonies. It might be expected that the Diacinans unites with the Ampolonian at the end of the play, but the reconciliation with Genetti hardly provides a substitute for Lucian. Far from reconciling or synthesizing the two poles, she eliminates all forms of otherness by allowing herself to be totally absorbed into her controlling lover, according to the characteristic surrealist trope, whereby Eros, or woman, allows the alienated self to ascend to the desirefulness of being, here conforming to Francisco's demand that her love for him should not involve any structures of alterity. I can't say the damn word. You still there, Joe?
And I'd be helping you, but you said it right the first time, I'm sure.
Otherness, alterity. The final moments of the last scene, the Apollonian human world is left behind as Francisco incorporates Ganetes within him and leads her forward towards full self-realization at the doors of the absolute, where life is grasped. Francisco takes her hand and gets her ready to go. Oh, return. Exuberance, not yet torn. My foaming nudity takes you, broken it with honor, and I want to lead you to the absolute gates, where life is seized. This closing act and self-realization initially sounds as much Hegelian as Nietzschean, as Fanon owns language, echoing and invoking the phenomenology Night of the Absolute suggests. We find a comparable mix of Hegel and Nietzschean at the end of César's Cashier, which stages his own Hegelian sublation in the final leap of the speaker of a new poetic consciousness. Just as the Cashier has an Hegelian three-part dialectical structure, so we can see the drowning eye also working in the same sequence, with the extended critique of Francisco in the second and third scene, ending in his rejection of Genenti, functioning as the long labor of the negative before its, that's a different word, affubung, in the dramatic moment of the final scene, where Francisco's final acts, by standing up and beginning to walk away. But the anticipated sublation into the absolute is not the absolute itself. He is leading Genenti towards the door, from which they can look out onto the prospect of Nietzschean form and primordial unity, the individuated reality of what Fanon and Père Noirn calls the primordial one that exists beyond all forms of appearance. Sounds like a god. If they went through the doors, they would be choosing death or the absolute. But instead they will stand naked before the beyond, before the abyss, where the eyes drawns, the antechamber of death, where it is possible to grasp the most intense experience of life. We are left with the affirmation of the aspirational Nietzschean moment of becoming an assertion of the human will to the absolutes, but not its final Hegelian achieved resolution. Unlike César Cashier, the drowning eye therefore does not conclude with a turn towards language as a proffered form of the sublime. It ends it with the more explicit desire for the freedom through transcendence and absolute otherness, which looks towards a self-achieved erasure of alienated consciousness and its social milieu. The meaning of such transcendence remains inevitable, inclusive. Giving the transcendence here seems to follow from the George Lukács, described as the negation of any meaning in the world or the life of man. The final moment of the play, which moves towards transcendence, offers a vision beyond the exigencies of the oppressive every day, which are left behind, unsupportable, alienated, self-consciousness, the sense of being caught in a perpetual wallowing between nothingness and the infinite. That this is apparently in the process of being resolved through the transcendence into the form of material immanence. Jesus Christ. The sentience. I'm going to read that. I'm going to look at that up. T. Y-E. Of course it won't let me say it out loud. Fucker. I hate you already. Nope, still won't let me say it out loud. Yay, another fucking YouTube.
Insurgents.
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 A complete lack of consciousness, sensation, or the ability to perceive or feel. Non-consciousness, even if inevitable. It remains a performative declaration before the gates have been reached. How do we understand the hesitating form of this transcendence and movement towards the absolute, which never achieves the finality? Both of Fanon's plays could be said to perform Kierkegaard's basic position that true existence is achieved by intensity of feelings, the intensity of which paradoxically puts the individual in contact with something outside him or herself, which Kierkegaard calls the absolute other, following the French interpretation of Kierkegaard's and, oh my gosh, Heidegger's transcendence has lost its religious or Hegelian character. It involves rather, as in Heidegger, Sartre in Walla, a perceptual movement towards the world and things, a transcendence of immanence, in which the absolute can be achieved momentarily in the instance through the individual act. I define myself as a absolute tension of opening, in a handwriting noted, tipped into Gaston Blanchard, Air and Dreams, 1943. Fanon wrote, "Do not seek the absolute through the relative, but totally illogical. A conversation must be undertaken, and the absolute must not be considered as a sort of end, which cannot be conceived given the reality of the means. I am thinking essentially of knowing. The conversation, therefore, consists of transposing the absolute in considering it a quality of things and in particular of act that would immolate pseudo problems of failures, and even that the objective failure. This is tantamount to return to existence in its character in unicity metaphysical. I don't know how to say that word. Thought I could say it. Unicity, metaphysical, per excellence, whence follows the notion of the absolute other. But it would seem that thereby we rejoin the aesthetic level of Kierkegaard, but everything stems from the difference of interpretations of the instant, rather in considering the instant as something no longer lived on the aesthetic level, but on the religious one. The conversation is made without giving primacy to that unique instance in which the disciple receives the condition in which in fact appears as the essentialist infiltration. Gotta look up this word. I did this. I-N.
Infiltration.
Yes, infiltration, I was right. Infiltration that most heavily strains the metaphysical feature of man. Every instance must count as much as possible. Fanon's play moves between two interrelated conceptions of the absolute articulated by Walla, whereby it is momentarily experienced as at once both the trustis experience of the self and of the non-self. Our thought of the absolute would be that it is not necessary to seek the absolute in the totality, nor in eternity, but in the partial and in the inferior, felt with intensity. Jesus. And the thought of the absolute is the thought as this atmosphere and domain where I realize myself by destroying myself, where the I, realize myself by drowning myself. Parallel hands. Any questions before I move on? This is hard. Any questions? Joe? Hello? Anybody awake? Alive? No? Okay. Joe?
I'm just not helping.
Okay. So I'm not doing anything wrong? I know you're late. It's okay. So I'm not doing anything wrong?
I'm sure you said it right the first time.
What's going on? Yeah, I think I'm good. Hold on a second. I gotta do something real quick.